Undermatching is the phenomena in which low-income students who actually are highly qualified to go to top colleges don't end up going. And the reason that happens is because of a lack of access to the resources and the guidance to know how to apply to these schools. In fact, the more competitive a college is, the harder it is to really even know what the process to applying looks like. And so not having that guidance or the resources to do that can prevent them from having the opportunity to go. The other thing to name too is that low-income students, especially if they're the first in their families to go to college, they're not growing up in an environment where it's like a given that they're going to go to a competitive school. And so oftentimes low-income students also lack the confidence to even apply because they're like, well, that's not for me probably. And so they write themselves out of the equation even before they've tried. And so that's something that we think a lot about as an organization, both on the side of making sure that they are given exposure to opportunities, given the guidance and the resources to be able to be on this path to applying to school and be able to be successful in these colleges once they go. But the other side of it, which is just as critical or perhaps even more so, is helping them build that confidence in themselves to see it as possible that they can go to these colleges and succeed. It's especially a problem because for low-income students, going to a top college actually has a tremendous effect on their socioeconomic opportunities in life. So there have been a ton of studies done actually on how the quality of the college, right, the competitiveness of the college that a low-income student goes to actually can determine the levels of income. I've sometimes spoken with supporters of our organization that have asked, well, I didn't go to a great college, but I did okay in life. And the question I always ask them is, did you grow up in a low-income community? And often I hear, well, no, that didn't happen for me. I had all these other things that were going on. And I think that that's the thing to really note, is that if you have access within your own existing community to opportunities, you may not need to go to as great a college. But if you don't, then you rely on the networks, the relationships, in addition to the degree that you get from a top college that is going to open further doors for you down the line. So it matters a lot for low-income kids that don't go to these top colleges because they really are basically not stepping through the gates of a college campus that gives them not only access to the great degree that they're going to get at the end of that journey, but also the incredible relationships that they're going to build that help them unlock further opportunities down the line in life. And they really need that. About 10 years ago now, NPR featured a study that had been done on all these different interventions that had been done in K-12, because what they were trying to look at is in school, so in the school setting, what is the most powerful intervention that can actually lift low-income students out of poverty? And what this study showed was actually the most powerful intervention that lifts low-income students out of poverty is something called school integration. School integration is a concept that's familiar to a lot of people. It's where you bus kids from lower income communities into schools that are actually situated within higher income communities. And that way what you're doing is you're bringing together different classes of people, different socioeconomic classes of people, and having these kids attend the same schools for several years. And the reason that this phenomena of school integration is so powerful is because it is believed that there's a tremendous mutual benefit to bringing people of different classes together. And that if you grow up in that environment together over the years, you build strong enough relationships. Kids with more resources will be able to drive some of those resources into the lives of kids with less resources. But kids with less resources, of course, are able to give a perspective to kids with more resources about, what the broader swath of the community really goes through, right? And that perspective also is very beneficial for higher income students. The second study that I'll cite is a year ago, the New York Times featured another study that had been done by Raj Chetty and team. Raj Chetty is a Harvard economist. And they looked at Facebook. So Facebook, they looked at 70 million users on Facebook and studied about 21 billion relationships between these 70 million users. And what they were looking at and very curious about was the last study I talked about, what is the intervention in school that reduces poverty? This study looked at broadly what is the general, right, intervention that matters in reducing poverty for all people, not just for students. And the number one thing they found that reduces poverty for low-income people is something called cross-class friendships. So once again, we have this idea of bridging classes coming up again in this study, and that if you bring people together from different socioeconomic backgrounds, those who are the folks that have more, if you will, can have a tremendous and profound impact on those that don't. And that's the thing that we really want to capitalize on as an organization. Every single week for 3 years throughout our program, we are bringing our students together with our volunteers. And our students are hungry, they're ambitious, they're motivated. They want to go to great colleges and they want to have great careers. But the question is, how? How do I get into these spaces? And not just how in terms of how do I apply to school, but how do I network? How do I ask for a recommendation? How do I build relationships beyond my immediate community? These are skills and experiences that our volunteers who exist sort of on the other side of this equation, they have access to these spaces. They are working at some of the most competitive companies in the Bay Area. They themselves have had the opportunity to go through all 4 years of college at a competitive space. They can bring that knowledge and those networks to bear in the way that they support our students. So that's what we hope for, is to maximize the impact of cross-class bridging and the integration, if you will, of people across socioeconomic communities and bringing them together to have the maximal impact on our students who are the first in their families to go to college and come from low-income communities, are looking to rewrite their socioeconomic future.